All right. Would like to thank everyone for joining us today for our latest Productive Knowledge series, the biggest threat facing IT today. We're going to be talking about ransomware, and I am the host for today's event, Chuck Eiton, Marketing Manager here at Productive Corp. I am joined by Pete Greco, the VP of Sales and Technology here, and we're going to be talking through what's happening. We've done a bunch of events on ransomware and on crypto threats. So what we're going to do is spend about 1 minute talking about who we are, what we do, and then the where's and what's of ransomware, some latest examples of 2 different threats that are out there, talk about some exploit kits, and really spend a bunch of time talking about stopping the threats and best practices around doing the event. And protecting yourself. So we'll be doing that. We'll be taking questions throughout, so feel free to chat those. But let's get on with who is Productive. We're security and storage software experts for the mid-market. We specialize in helping across the board with security, whether it's at your gateway or your endpoint. We can also install, answer any questions you have. We can do implementation. If you're not sure what's going on with your environment, we can come in and do an assessment, talk through that, do some penetration tests both on the front end and the back end to really uncover some things and ultimately help you configure any solutions you buy. So we see a lot of stuff out there, and we do a good job capturing that. You can find that on our website, productivecorp.com/content. Or on our YouTube channel. We have tons of stuff there as well. So check us out. We have lots of videos. I think we have 105 different videos up just helping the mid-market. We do almost 1,000 transactions a year. So we see a lot. And we see just tons and tons of malware getting out there, a lot of ransomware. And that's what really brought us to this. So with that, we'll bring in Pete, who on a daily basis sees crypto threats across tons of our customers. So that's kind of what this event is around. Like I said, if you have any questions, chat them. I'll ask them to Pete, and we can go from there. So Pete, you with us?
All right, I am. Let's get this bad boy rolling. We'll get everybody on their way, hopefully right at the bottom of the hour, if not a smidge before. So thanks a lot, Chuck, for getting us started. Thanks, everybody, for hopping on with us today. Really appreciate your time. I think everybody knows what ransomware is, or actually, that's not quite true, because I was talking to somebody last night who was asking me about it. I think everybody on this call probably knows what ransomware is, but that's part of the challenge is your end users really potentially don't. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it does, and they don't know how to help you stop it from getting in, right? And so what makes this so devastating to a lot of organizations is getting that data encrypted. And this isn't just targeting sensitive data, it's targeting your whole disk. And so whether it's secret information, private information, information that you really wouldn't care is leaked out into the public, maybe you're working on marketing materials that you're going to post on your website anyway, you no longer have access to them to be able to complete your job, right? And as we put in the list here, has roots going back to the early days of fake AV. I don't know if anybody remembers that from just a few years ago, but really, 3-4 years ago, all we were talking about really was fake AV. Still tons of actual viruses running around, and where those were quite effective was if you could get connected with somebody who would gladly help you uninstall your legitimate antivirus program and install their program that really does nothing or provides them a conduit into the organization. One fake AV organization got to be so large that they actually had a huge help desk in Malaysia. Once that organization got busted, they had uncovered a Breaking Bad style barrels full of cash buried in the yard type situation. All the help desk folks that were getting paid in cash They didn't know anything malicious was going on. They thought they were just trying to cheat on their taxes. That's how innocent it was, right? Caused millions of dollars worth of theft and damage. Now that turns into ransomware, where they're not infiltrating any data. They don't have to contact you. They're running a Bitcoin site that's going to allow you to pay the ransom and get your data back. Now, you're really depending on an honor among thieves type situation here, in that if you pay, you're actually going to get the decryption key so you can get your data back. The good news is most of these folks are fairly honest in that part of the transaction. They do recognize that if you start posting that you don't get your data back, no one's actually going to pay the ransom. So they are pretty legit in that one tiny aspect. One of our partners was sharing with me that a lot of these folks really consider themselves to be Robin Hood. The thing that we've identified from a lot of our customers, though, is a lot of folks that are getting impacted by this are not super wealthy. So they're not stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. They're just stealing from everybody and keeping all the dough, right? So a totally different deal. This is typically what you're going to see depending on the actual flavor of ransomware that you're getting. You're going to see something that looks similar to one of these two screens, or kind of in this ballpark, that really is helping you to navigate to a Bitcoin site where you can pay the fee. They're pretty helpful. We've even seen a couple of these that do have a number that you can dial into to get additional assistance, right? Obviously harbored in a country not friendly to the U.S., making it hard to track those guys down. Some of these new threats are featuring escalating ransoms, so if you don't pay quick enough, the price goes up, right? So making it harder and harder for people to really spend any time trying to figure out what to do versus quickly getting that fee paid. Couple of different kinds of main attack vectors, right? Probably the most popular is the phishing or spear phishing attempt, right? Dropping out, and as Chuck put in the slide here, invoice, parcel delivery. My favorite is the UPS refund. Anybody, and no offense to UPS if they're on this call, if you've ever tried to get your money back from UPS, they run you through the ringer to get your dough back. So the fact that an email just shows up with a PDF that contains your refund information, that's a pretty easy one for those who are in the know to spot. But I see tons of these where coworkers and my wife just the other day, I think this is legit. It's not legit. You don't even use that email for Amazon. It's not legit, right? And you're kind of trying to counsel them through it, but the emails are looking better and better. And let's be honest, folks, what's the harm in clicking on this thing, right? Well, the harm, of course, is now you're going to get vulnerable to the next step in that threat, which typically is going to be some kind of drive-by download or direct infection from an exploit kit coming right at you, right? Lots of money to be made here. So what we've seen over the past 2 years is tons of folks working together on the black market, helping each other write scripts, helping each other figure out how to make their exploit kits work better, or figure out where can I rent an exploit kit so that I can deliver my malicious code. And they might be targeting specific organizations, or they might just be throwing those threats out into the wild to see what's going on. I think a lot of the smaller organizations really want to believe that the attackers are really only targeting the big guys, and that it's more of this kind of movie type scenario where they've chosen a specific organization, they're going to get in no matter what. That is happening as well, but the bulk of these are more of a spray and pray type situation. They're widely broadcasting a net, looking to see how many fish they can get caught, with no filter at all to say, oh, you're small, you don't have sensitive data, you're not this kind of organization, you're that kind of organization, so we're going to let you off the hook. They're hitting all kinds of corporations, big and small, nonprofits, local governments, right? There's really no rhyme or reason to who they're hitting if they can catch in the net. So, you know, Locky was really, up until recently, one of the most popular and most successful, outpacing crypto locker, crypto wall for number of infections and estimated amount of money paid. Originated from the Drydex banking malware, focused on banks and credit unions. Obviously, where Drydex was really huge is having just a massive email repository that was allowing them to send massive amounts of spam from both compromised mail servers and hosted server farms that they were running, probably out of China, is what a lot of reports are saying, potentially out of Eastern Europe, right? A lot of reports are saying, and causing as many as 100,000 infections a day. And that's not how many emails they've sent, that's the actual number of infections per day, right? So you've got that kind of marketing capability to get the malware out there. You're going to make a lot of money sending this out, and you're going to cause a lot of headaches. Now, getting the phishing link out there is just the first step, right? You got to spend a little time to get folks to click on it, and fortunately, a lot of folks are starting to get smarter and smarter about kind of paying attention to the links and this kind of stuff. Still a major issue, but that's really just the first step. Once you click on that, right, what's going to happen next? A lot of these ransomwares and a lot of malwares in general have been leveraging exploit kits that are getting rented. So it's kind of exploit kit as a service. The developers are renting them out to the hackers to be able to use these to deliver their malware. And then they're providing support and updates in exchange for a fee and potentially a commission, depending on the owner of the exploit kit. One of the most popular ones that we've seen, Nuclear EK, right? And basically what this is doing is it's getting delivered a couple of different ways. Once you get it, you're basically now inviting the threat into the environment, right? And you're getting redirected to a set of exploits that are first going to scan the machine. So here's where it's been successful: is it doesn't just start launching all the exploits, and it's looking for things like Silverlight, Flash, exploits in Office, right, Java. So it doesn't just launch all these exploits and see where it gets lucky. It scans and it's looking for the programs on your machine that are actually exploitable. So if you've got Office 2016 that is fully patched, Nuclear EK, as of the last review, was not yet able to compromise Office 2016. So if it sees that you've got that, it's not going to trigger your protection by throwing that threat out and risking getting caught. It's going to now scan Java. It's going to scan Silverlight. It just needs one of these programs to not be patched. So you can even be really upping your game on patch. You miss one application on one machine a couple of times in a row, and you might be vulnerable now for that one tiny area. So it finds the right target. It launches one correct exploit, right, which is then going to initiate communication with a command and control server, and now you can actually start downloading the backdoor dropper. Once the backdoor dropper's installed, now you're able to start infiltrating and exfiltrating data back and forth, which can include stealing data and then dropping more and more malware on. Remote control of the machine. Now I can start using this machine to gain access to other machines. I can use this privilege to get better privileges. All kinds of different things you can do with this, and obviously very popular as of late, using EK, Nuclear EK, to drop out ransomware. So a lot of great things. If you take a look at our YouTube channel, Chuck was mentioning that earlier, youtube.com/productive content. One of the first things we did talking about nuclear exploit, Pat, was the the career builder attack. The great thing about that is they're sending over a compromised resume to folks who have run an ad on Career Builder. So that's something you're expecting to see. The next good thing is this is probably a key stakeholder who's ultimately going to be reviewing this. So maybe it's a recruiter who gets it first. They forward it on to a manager and a hiring manager. If it's a smaller organization, it might be a couple of managers that are taking a look at this thing, and now you're getting 2 infections for the price of 1 right off the bat, right? So a couple of different kinds of campaigns here that folks are using, right? Is it's the phishing attempt, which we've kind of talked about, that may include attachments that are impacted and infected. The next step there is going to be to try and leverage known exploits or known vulnerabilities, I should say, in a lot of the products that you're using. And having macros enabled is a great way for folks to get into that. Those macros can do a whole bunch of different things, like move you to a malicious site, right? Then it's going to run a VB script, and boom, you've got Locky. Right, they're doing the same thing with zip files now. So the zip file comes in, it's potentially not getting scanned at the gateway, it's not getting scanned at the endpoint. You launch it and you're quickly getting infected. And part of the challenge here is your endpoint product may still detect this, right, but it may not detect it until the infection is complete, or it may not clean it off until the infection is complete. So once your files are encrypted, cleaning off the Locky threat does not decrypt the files. It's not going to spread. You still need to do it. That's a great thing. But once the encryption happens, those files are encrypted, right? And then it's visiting a compromised site. And this could start with a phishing attempt still to get you to some kind of drive-by download, or tons and tons and tons of legitimate websites getting compromised in multitudes of ways. So it could be a straight-up hack of the site. Or my favorite is a legitimate purchase of a banner ad that directs you to a drive-by download, right? So they're actually, rather than hacking the site and raising awareness that something has gone wrong, they're actually purchasing the ad through legitimate means. So you're making a small investment in order to get a lot of hits on your malware. Just like any business, it's going to sometimes cost money or take money to make money. They're subscribing to that, right? You get the redirect to the compromised gateway. Nuclear exploit kit is in. Bing, bang, boom. You've got the ransomware, right? So Zcrypt now has become the newest, replacing Locky, one of the most successfuls. Zcrypt got off to a rough start, though. Part of their challenge is they couldn't keep their back-end server running, and so a lot of folks that were paying the ransom were not getting the decryption key. And that cost these guys a bunch of money. A lot of folks were posting to not pay. So they really needed to up their game on the back end to make sure that this product was working correctly. The encryption was happening, but you got to make sure you're getting that decryption key or folks aren't going to pay. So that's the kind of mindset and the kind of thinking that's behind some of these organizations. They really understand how to run this thing like a business. Now, Zcrypt is doing a couple of different things. They're upping the price if you don't pay quick enough. So the malware guys really dig that. And then they've merged in some of the traditional worm capabilities so that this thing doesn't need to get forwarded by your end user. It's able to spread across the environment on its own. So that's a major catastrophe. So far, or I guess at our last research, only targeting Windows still, but a lot of capabilities where this thing could easily spread to Linux and Mac with a little more development. And I'm sure that that's something that these folks are working on.
It can't go to Macs. They don't get malware.
Great point, Chuck. That was paid for by Apple directly, I hope. Co-sponsor of Productive Corporation. So how does Zcrypt work, right? Just like we've talked about a lot of these very common themes, the user is going to get initiated some kind of a clickable link, either from a compromised website, probably from a phishing. It seems like that is really becoming the #1 way to go. I've seen some studies saying as high as 90% of these are originating from email initial attempt, right? Download the payload, The worm then is going to copy itself to the application data folder. It's going to hide itself, so very hard to see visibly. It's going to make some registry mods so that it can keep reinstalling itself. It's going to replicate to removable drives. This is where we really want to be serious about device control. Don't talk to nearly enough people thinking about that, right? So now that can spread across the environment, not on the network. So your vulnerability scanner, not going to see it at all. Your SIM tool, potentially not going to see it because it's not going over the network. It's going drive to drive. That's what makes it very easy for this thing to come from home. User gets it at home and brings it into the environment that way, right? Then it's going to create a Windows startup shortcut. How old school is that? So that this thing can just keep restarting on its own automatically, reboot after reboot. Then it's out to the command and control server. Boom, we got the payload. Now we're ready to compromise other machines and start earning money, right? So not too much of a difference other than the ability to spread and replicate. Some of the previous cryptor threats really relying on the end user to spread that data around, but really being happy if they can just compromise one or two end users at an organization, because times the masses, that's really adding up to some serious dough for these guys, right? So where is a good place to stop ransomware? Right, and that's really a trick question because it's everywhere. There is no bad place, right? You want to stop it at the gateway. You want to stop it at the endpoint. You want to stop it on the network, right? We want to stop it wherever we can, and there's a lot of entry points into the environment. And when we talk to a lot of customers, they think about the gateway as the sole place where data comes in. And the challenge is you have machines that don't leave the environment that interface with removable drives, right? So that's a problem. You've got devices getting plugged in like mobile phones, where we're starting to see threats hiding on those phones and moving over to a machine. So it might not compromise the phone. It might just be lying there waiting to get onto the network environment. That can come in a couple of different ways. We see machines going out to public places, and this could be, Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi places like your coffee shops, restaurants, this kind of stuff. Might be at a client or business partner site without a good security strategy. So you might be doing everything under the sun that you can control, and your end user goes to a customer or a business partner where they do not have a great security strategy. They're getting infected there and bringing it back home with them, right? So lots of different ways to do it. One of the easiest ways, and maybe this is easier said than done, to prevent some of these threats from actually being able to work is have all the patches applied. Can be hard to get those out without a great patch strategy. Lots of areas where you can miss just one or two machines, which then can be the focal point for those attacks. You still got to get them clean, though. Just having the patch applied may defend you from the attack actually working on you, but when you have a threat that spreads across the network, every single machine needs to be patched in order for that to work. And then, of course, you've got end user training, right? Keep those guys helping you out. So some of the things to help you recover from a ransomware attack: being able to go to the backup, right? And you want to make sure that you're backing up in a way that the backup is not attackable from the devices that are potentially getting the ransomware. So you want to have those encrypted so that they're safe from prying eyes, and you want to have them. Go ahead.
One of the issues we see quite often, right, is people have a great backup policy, but then all the data is still attached to the network. So
Correct.
If you're not taking that off site or doing something with it, when all your servers get encrypted, all your backups forever are getting encrypted, and you're stuck.
Or you're backing up to a file server that everybody has permissions to, not controlling permissions, so way more access than what you thought you had allowed. Tons of ways that this is going right for folks, and tons of ways that it's going wrong for folks. Definitely something that we can help you identify. Don't enable macros. Now, this is a tricky one because there's a lot of folks out there that use them. If you have no need for it, getting that disabled with a group policy is absolutely gonna help. Be cautious about unsolicited attachments. Again, this is a situation where probably every single person on this call can identify, to the 99th percentile when they get an attachment that they should not be looking at. It's those folks in accounting, it's those folks in marketing, it's those folks in sales that maybe are not there. So how do we help get them there, right? Controlling permissions and access, again, just a huge area to keep things contained. Controlling permissions and access doesn't prevent the malware from getting in or prevent the threats. It definitely helps stop the spread, though, right? And a lot of these threats, they're continuing to work on developing. They're continuing to review the exploits. Every time a patch gets released, you're basically giving a hacker a framework for where to look on how they're going to attack, right? So it's a never-ending battle of the only way for me to fix this hole is to let you know this hole exists. We're now notifying everybody, right? So this can help keep it under control. Consider installing the Microsoft Office viewers. That's probably an easier said than done for a lot of folks. If you're actually not creating any documents, you can get by with this. You can take advantage of opening files, right, to do a preview inside of a viewer versus open it in the full document. That goes back down, though, to be cautious about unsolicited attachments. If we can be great here, then we don't have to worry so much down here. And of course, and I love Chuck's patch graphic there. Patch as early as you can and as often as you can, right? And go ahead.
I have to admit, I did rip off that graphic.
I figured that was right off your jacket, actually. That was my guess. I thought that was a real photo. We've upped our game. Previously we were patching at the beginning of the month very regularly, very diligently, never missing it, right? And we've actually gone now to where we're throwing out patches at least once a week and sometimes twice a week if we're hearing about particularly nasty stuff, and really then running down the failures, which takes a lot of work. I'm not going to fool you there. It takes a lot of work when you got a machine that's not getting the patches. You got to make the time to get out there and figure out what's what. And we're really trying to be diligent about doing that. And then make sure that your security products are configured correctly. One of the biggest things that we see out there is folks down with some of these cryptor threats, other kinds of malware, where they had the right products, they just didn't have them working the right way or weren't reviewing them. And that's a tricky one, right? So you're going to spend the money to get that great solution. It's well worth it to spend a little bit more and make sure you're getting expert help on setting that up and configuring it so that you're ready to start managing that solution that you spend a lot of time trying to figure out if it's right for you, right? End user education. This is a tough one. It's getting made easier by some organizations out there, but you got to get your end users really understanding what's going on, how these things are working, what's their ultimate goal. Surprisingly, I got a great email over the weekend. A couple out of Europe won $50 million in the British lottery. And because they're so charitable, they've identified 5 folks, of which I was one, to give 2 million British pounds to, right? That's their form of charity, is to seek out a middle-class guy like myself and give me this generous gift.
Did it start kindly, sir?
Yeah, pretty close to that. Pretty close to that. Right, and so I can see where folks are feeling like, oh man, why not take a chance? What's the worst that can happen? Well, that's the thing that's hard for folks to see. As this seems pretty benign, they're not asking for my bank account number on this initial email, right, or my credit card number or what else. I'm sure at some point I'm going to have to give them my banking information so they can get me the dough. That's where I'm now going to be. I'm going to be compromised, right? So test your end users, fish them on a regular basis, help them see how these things are impactful, and figure out who in your environment is likely to click on these things, right? You've probably got some folks that They get it. They see this email come in. That's not right. That's not for me. They're talking about an accounting refund. I'm in marketing. I wouldn't have anything to do with that. Or I'm in ops. I wouldn't have anything to do with that. Right? They get it. Who's that person in your organization who's going to click on everything? Oh, someone sent me an email? I'm clicking on that for sure. It'd be disrespectful not to do it. Right? How do we hone in and start giving them the education that they need? Right?
So Pete, backing up a little at that stat back there, I thought that was crazy. I just saw that was released from one of our partners,
Yeah.
but a 76% global increase from April to June.
Yeah.
I mean,
in 2 months.
Because they're printing money. That's why.
Exactly. And they've got these massive email databases, right? So anytime somebody's been compromised, at the very least, you're getting a new mail list that you can leverage, right? So some additional things that you can do to protect the environment: encrypt data. Now, encrypted data can be re-encrypted with ransomware. So this isn't a prevention to ransomware, but it is going to prevent any data that's getting exfilled from your environment, or lost laptops from getting into the wrong hands, right? And security analysis tools. Scanning, monitoring the environment, looking for indicators of compromise so that you can more quickly respond in the case of an actual attack or incident, right, is becoming more and more critical, and a lot of tools available for all sizes of organizations. So your small business might not use the same stuff that a Target or a Home Depot or a Walmart or some of these guys are using. Doesn't mean that there aren't tools out there that don't fit into your budget, and that's something that we can help you figure out. Some of the products that we are recommending to help you combat some of these threats. Tons of things you can do out there. Penetration tests and vulnerability assessment, for sure. Some of the key ways where you can figure out what you got going on. Great solutions from these organizations. End user education made easy through our partner Wombat. These guys have a great little tool that allows you to phish your users, and if they are susceptible to getting the attack, then it gives them what they call a teachable moment. And so now they get a video training that comes back if they failed, and you can pre-train, then phish, and then retrain the folks that have failed, but you give them the teachable moment so they can understand, hey, these kinds of links, when you click here, you can see here it doesn't go back to the organization. Look at the logo. Is that your actual bank logo? Are they asking you for this kind of information that your bank doesn't need to get from you? Right? Think about when you engage with your credit card company or TiVo or your cable company or whatever. They're not asking you for your password. They don't need your password to look at your account. How would they bill you if they couldn't get into your account, right? They know this stuff. So doing some great stuff there. And, if you do have an incident, being able to get that data back. So love to talk with you folks more about what's going on with your environment, give you some strategies, give you some ideas, and ultimately create a security partnership where we can help you get to a high level across your entire environment.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Pete. That was a good presentation. We went a little bit over, so if there are any final questions, you can go ahead and shoot those to help@productivecorp.com. We can answer anything that you got that maybe we hadn't gotten to. I'll also have this recording up hopefully tomorrow on our YouTube channel, so you can check it out there. Along with the Amazon gift cards, I will be sending those tomorrow morning, probably at the latest. So be on the lookout for those. They'll come straight from Amazon. So appreciate everyone taking 34 minutes of your time today to learn about what we had to say, and hopefully it helped you further along in the security conversation. So with that, we'll leave it there. Thanks, Pete, and thanks for everyone for joining us.
All right, take care, everybody.